Recording in progress.
For as long as people have called this place home, they've been welcomed with clean air, clean water, and an abundance of nature. As time went on, people saw the need to balance how we build cities with how we protect farms and forests. That's why across Greater Portland, in 24 cities and 3 counties, there's one metro government that brings us all together to maintain that vital balance, to provide services across cities and counties, to create a better future together. Hello, we're Metro. We plan for housing, jobs, and safe transportation. We protect land, air, and water by managing garbage and recycling. We support arts and culture by overseeing local venues to keep the economy growing. And we connect people to nature across 17,000 acres of parks and trails and at the Oregon Zoo. Metro is all of us working together, connecting how we live today with how we plan for the future. Hello, we're Metro, and so are you.
Morning, I'd like to declare a quorum and call the meeting to order of the Metro Council work session for October 10th. Good morning, everyone. I will now ask Connor to call the roll for attendance.
Thank you. Councilor Nolan.
Present. Good morning.
Good morning. Councilor Gonzalez.
Good morning.
Good morning. Councilor Rosenthal.
Present. Good morning.
Morning. Councilor Wong.
Present.
Councilor Simpson.
Present.
Councilor Lewis.
Present.
And President Peterson.
Present, thank you. Before we begin our agenda items, can we please play the safety video for our in-person attendees?
I'm Bob Lee, one of the animal curators here at the Oregon Zoo, and safety is a huge part of our job. We focus on the safety of our guests who come to spend time with us every day, the staff who works very closely with these animals, and for the animals themselves. I'm here at the Oregon Zoo and you're in the Metro Regional Center. The council chambers are located on the 3rd floor. In the event of a fire or fire alarm, please exit through the door in the northeast corner of the room. Go down the stairs to the 2nd floor, exit through the main entrance by the reception desk, and gather in the courtyard outside that entrance. In the event of a medical or fire emergency, please call 911 and notify the security agent at the front desk. The nearest defibrillator is mounted on the steps leading from the reception desk down to Grand Avenue. Thank you, and come visit us at the zoo.
All right, we'll start our session with the first work session topic of the day, which is 82nd Avenue Transit Project Update. Staff and our corridor chairs want to hear from Metro Council on their priorities and thoughts before a decision is made on the LPA. We have Kelly Betteridge, the Metro Investment Area Manager, and Elizabeth Moroso O'Hara, Metro Investment Area's Project Manager, to present on this work. And I just get kicked off of what I was looking at. Thank you for, so go ahead. Good morning, sorry.
Good morning.
A little rough today.
All right. Is it on? Yep. Okay. Could you pull up our presentation, please?
Yeah, should come up in just a second here.
Great. Thank you. Well, first off, I want to thank everybody for having us here today. We're excited to have some time to update you on the 82nd Avenue Transit Project. Again, my name is Elizabeth Moroso O'Hara, and me and Kelly Betteridge will be walking you through where we are with the project and getting some feedback. Next slide. So we are kind of arriving at a point in the project where some major decisions are going to be made in early next year. We're working on getting a locally preferred alternative with our steering committee. And so it's a good time for us to come and talk to Metro Council and receive any questions or feedback from you before we get to that point. So today I want to walk a little bit through why we're doing the 82nd Avenue Transit Project, an overview of the goals and existing conditions, talk a bit about the partnerships of the leadership that are working on the project, and community engagement is also feeding into all of that. And then Kelly's going to talk a bit about the locally preferred alternative and the nuts and bolts of how we're going to get there, the timeline, next steps, and we'll have time for some questions. Next slide. So 82nd Avenue has been recognized as a major transit priority for our region for well over 10 years. It's been in the regional transportation plan as a major priority and is again being reinforced this time around. It's been in the high capacity transit plan, and it's in the updated high capacity transit plan as a tier 1 corridor because there are so many needs. In addition, we're at a time where we can leverage a lot of energy that's coming to the corridor. With the jurisdictional transfer that happened where a big portion of the corridor is, of the roadway is going to be under Portland's jurisdiction, there's a big investment coming too. So not only Portland with the Building a Better 82nd Avenue program is really focusing on a lot of safety improvements and trying to improve the corridor to be more of a civic corridor. ODOT is also making investments in the Clackamas County section. And so with all these safety investments coming to fruition on a high crash corridor, we're excited about being able to work closely with those groups and coordinate transit improvements, which will also really benefit from new crossings, better sidewalks, and other types of complementary work. And we can complement that work as well, because the transit project is really about improving things for pedestrians as well as transit riders. Next slide. So the purpose of the 82nd Avenue Transit Project is multifold. It's to improve transit speed, reliability, capacity, safety, comfort, and access along 82nd Avenue. And that's running all the way from Clackamas Town Center Transit Center north to terminus yet to be determined. We're looking at 4 different terminus locations: the Portland Airport, Cascade Station, the Cully Neighborhood, and Park Rose Transit Center. And the project is really seeking to address the needs of people who live, work, learn, shop, and travel within the corridor, both today and in the future. That's important, and it's important to particularly serve BIPOC and low-income individuals and really go forward with context-sensitive improvements. Next slide. So our steering committee was established by you all in June 2022, and it's intended to really reflect the different agencies and community members that are most likely to be affected by the project. So we've got 7 different agencies that have electeds and directors that are serving on the committee. We've got an Oregon legislature representative on the committee, and we have 4 different community members that are representing the community through business and other social services and activities. Our co-chairs are Councilor Huang and Lewis, and their role, the role of the steering committee is really to help us identify the locally preferred alternative, which includes the parameters for the project, and Kelly will talk more about that. Next slide. A really nice thing about our steering committee is we have community members on there as decision makers, and some of those community members also serve on the 82nd Avenue Coalition, which is working to create an equitable development strategy, really focusing on the other important things that are needed in the corridor outside of the transit project and related to the transit project. So we've got a lot of cross-pollination, not only with our community engagement, but actually having these folks sitting in the room with us as we make decisions. Next slide. The project is working on addressing multiple needs. We know that transit speed and reliability needs to be addressed. The bus runs about 12.9 miles per hour in some areas. It's slow and it gets off schedule. It's a constrained corridor, so we have to figure out how to make the bus work through a narrow roadway that has freight and auto pressure as well. Safety is a big deal, especially access to transit and bus stops. It's really problematic. Lots of high injuries, and particularly pedestrians are vulnerable. And as we know, transit riders are all pedestrians. We've got a lot of transit-dependent communities that really need this kind of improvement to improve their lives and help them as they rely on transit to go to work and take care of their daily needs. In addition, this project is intended to be one of the things that we do to help with climate change. Public transit is identified in all of our regional, state, and local plans as a primary tool to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Next slide. So another reason we're really focused on this line is the Line 72 runs through this corridor, and it is the highest ridership bus in the entire TriMet system. It carries more people than the orange line or the yellow line, and yet it runs in mixed traffic. So it has to contend with all the competing things that can slow it down. It connects to over 20 bus lines just along the 82nd Avenue corridor and 3 MAX lines. And it has not only serves a lot of residential populations, but there are so many businesses and attractors along 82nd. It's got the highest passenger delay. It's stuck in traffic. Existing bus stops are really close together. Not ideal, even if we weren't improving this project. TriMet would want to look at that. And most of the bus stops are lacking shelters, seating, crosswalks, lighting, and real-time information. It's not a great system now. So next slide. Who is it serving? This map is showing about a half mile around the corridor. That's generally how far people are willing to walk for high-quality transit. And what you see is we have around 70,000 people that live in that area, fairly densely packed. And that's about the same population as Oregon City plus Tualatin. So we've got a city right here. We've got 5 to 7% of the employment for the region, and we're anticipated to grow. In addition, the types of folks that live there really rely on transit more than the general population. We've got equity focus areas, persons with disability at a higher rate than the region, more zero-car households than the region, and we have populations that are dealing with affordable housing and multifamily. Next slide. Just really quick, this slide is showing how many equity focus areas and where they are. They're all up and down the corridor. We have a lot of low-income folks. 32% of the population is low income. Some of the most diverse census tracts, over 50% of some of them are BIPOC, and we have limited English proficiency at much higher rates than the region. Next slide. So we have a lot of needs. Transit infrastructure is lacking, and it makes it difficult and sometimes dangerous for folks to access transit here. We've got narrow missing sidewalks, poor accessibility, stops too close together, and lots of missing things. So we know we can do better, and we have this opportunity, so we're pretty excited about being able to do that. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Kelly to talk a little bit about the locally preferred alternative.
Sounds good. Thanks, Elizabeth. Good morning. As Elizabeth mentioned, the work that we're doing now is really focused on getting to what we call the locally preferred alternative. So as a reminder, in this region, we really want to get to a high-level understanding of some key components of the investment, and then after that time, we'll enter into an agreement with the Federal Transit Administration and really dive into design and sort of the nuts and bolts of the project. So the components, as we think about it, for the locally preferred alternative are mode, alignment, sort of where does it start, where does it end, and then general station locations. In addition to those pieces, which are typically displayed on a map, we also need a high-level funding plan, which is to say, once we enter into that process, we know that we're able to garner the funds that will be necessary to both get into the process, move through the process, and ultimately construct the project. Next slide, please. From a mode perspective, that's already been decided, and so this is going to be Bus Rapid Transit, or specifically in this region, we call this FX. It's one of the brands that TriMet has, and it means that there'll be more capacity for riders on the bus. There's all-door boarding, near-level boarding, robust taking stops to stations, a really great environment for those that are choosing to take transit. Not only is it an investment in the transit vehicle itself, but next slide, it's also really important to think about all the things that come with that. So there are the stations themselves, but there's also how one safely traverses the corridor and gets to those stations. And so a lot of times when we're having conversations with the community, they're interested in the investment, and even folks that don't take transit are interested in really seeing an improvement in safety and lighting and all of those things that make traversing the corridor much more enjoyable. Next slide, please. A lot of the work that we're doing at this moment with the steering committee is around identifying general station locations. So again, we're looking for sort of those places that we know currently have very high ridership, have things that attract trips. And as staff, we do sort of a deep dive into the technical pieces of identifying those stations, and then we do a very robust vetting process, both with the public, but also with each of the local jurisdictions to make sure that we're all on the same page. And in addition, as Elizabeth mentioned, we're having a number of conversations about selecting the correct northern terminus. So there are currently 4 options. We're diving into that, both in terms of fit how best to accommodate a terminus, but also in terms of the metrics around ridership and costs, and then, of course, those important community conversations. Next slide, please. As you know, and one of the best things I think about getting to do this type of work in this region is that we take public engagement incredibly seriously. And so we've been doing a lot of really robust work, touching as many folks as possible, really understanding those for which we are planning, and also making sure that as we're starting to see some of these pieces come to fruition, that we're making the right recommendations based on what folks need today and in the future. And so we'll continue that outreach as we develop the locally preferred alternative recommendation. Next slide. I'll hand it back to Elizabeth to talk about more specifically those next steps.
Thanks. Yeah, so we are at a point where, like Kelly said, we're really digging into the technical analysis. We are going to be holding some focus groups to talk more about engagement around the terminus locations and get some more direct feedback from the folks that live in those areas or have businesses there or have other interests. And then in the winter, our project team is going to incorporate all that community feedback and create a staff recommendation. The staff will recommend a full draft LPA on the travel mode, the route, and the general station locations in February. And then in April, our steering committee is going to vote on a locally preferred alternative. So after that happens, our partners will adopt the LPA into their local plans, and then we'll be coming back to JPAC to get a recommendation of the LPA to council and then Metro Council. And that could be in the summer or fall, depending on how long it takes to get through the partners' processes.
Great, thank you. So you have a question for council?
Yeah, I think our question is really just about what you'd like to hear about, and then I think the co-chairs might say a few things.
Yeah, I'll turn it over to Councilor Huang and Lewis for any additional comments.
I think I'm the close, but you can go ahead.
Great, yeah, it's just been a real privilege to co-chair the 82nd Avenue Steering Committee with Councilor Lewis. And we've been working hard with our community to get guidance for the locally preferred alternative and stop placements and moving this transformational transit project on 82nd Avenue forward. And also, it's been great also working with all the community partners on an anti-displacement strategy and just taking all the lessons kind of learned from the division project and bringing them to 82nd and TV Highway as well. And yeah, just really looking forward to getting to the LPA and applying for federal funds next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to recognize that the equitable development strategy is part of a body of work that we started at TV Highway, worked on, and are really learning more from our previous projects. So EDS is an important component, something that not only we're championing, but helping to fund, particularly the 82nd Avenue Coalition and that work. So also thrilled that the state legislature allocated $5 million to Metro's transit-oriented development team to acquire the property on 82nd Avenue to help support community goals. So as we've heard from the presentation today, we're in the process and have yet to reach a decision point, but we'd like feedback now and early, not only from council, but from community. Staff and ourselves as co-chairs want to hear priorities and thoughts, particularly as it comes to how people are going to use this new line. So we're excited today to discuss our thoughts, our hopes, our concerns as we get close to making some key decisions. Earlier today, I referred to this project as pure joy because I do think that whenever you talk about 82nd and the kind of improvements we want to make, there is no resistance. Everybody's excited to see a future in which you can cross at a logical place to cross. Everybody's excited to wait for a bus that's actually going to come and get them to a destination somewhere on time. So I think the devil's in the details of, exactly which choices we make around the terminus, around where the stops are. But at the end of the day, I think it's making those choices and then finding the resources, and we've got community support.
Great. Counselors, any input for the team? Any questions? Oh, Counselor Rosenthal and then Simpson.
Thank you, Chair Peterson. And I think it's great that 82nd, 82nd has been a mess since I moved here 50 years ago. And it's nice to see that something is finally happening. I mean, obviously, it's gotten worse over the years, and the transfer was very effective. Couple just technical questions. How much time will you be saving in the proposed route over the current time? Will there be any dedicated lanes for the buses? And then probably my biggest concern is connectivity at the ends of the route to other areas. For example, connectivity from Clackamas Town Center to Happy Valley or to Clackamas or to, Oregon City and stuff like that. I'm assuming that's being taken care of. I mean, but I'm just questions on those.
Yeah, those are great questions. I'll take, I'll bat first and then you can add anything. So in regard to the amount of savings, it really depends. Like I said, we're getting into sort of this high level understanding of the LPA, and then we'll enter into a very detailed design process. And it's through that design process that we'll identify, like you mentioned, specific extents that might be priority for bus and those types of things. What I can say is that by having transit signal priority and moving towards stop consolidation, that we typically see something like a 15 to 20% savings with just those two pieces, which are known to be part of the project.
Okay.
And again, in regard to the having more priority within the alignment, that's something that we'll all work together to develop as we get into design.
I would agree with that, and I guess I would just add that the connectivity is super important on this corridor. We have over 20 bus lines that connect, and we know about 35% of people make transfers. So we are thinking about that in depth, and we're also thinking about, depending on the terminus, what the best way to connect people to the places they want to go. So working with TriMet in depth on that, and also talking to the public about it.
One quick follow-up, I guess, and obviously I'm concerned because I'm involved with the TV highway issue. Has 82nd ever been classified as a freight route, but it's no longer a freight route because it's city jurisdiction, correct?
It's still a freight route, so it has the highest classification for automobiles, for freight, and for pedestrians, and the second highest classification for bikes in Portland, and that's still the case. And so there's a lot of balancing that needs to happen. And we know that the bus can carry more people than a car, but we need to figure out how to work with the community to get the stations in the right place and get the priority in the right place. But it will continue to be a freight route.
Oh, it will continue, okay,
Yeah.
under city jurisdiction. Interesting. Thank you.
All right, Counselor Simpson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I begin, I want to thank the staff for all the work that they've done and put into this, and I want to send a special thank you to Councilors Wong and Lewis for their leadership on this. This is a project that I have kept in my vision for a while now, and I'm really excited to hear that we're moving forward, but also I'm excited to hear that we're centering community and continuing to center community. I think that throughout the whole process is key in not only building trust with government agencies and the things that we're trying to push forward, but also I believe it's a shared value amongst the council. So my hat goes off to you all. And I just want to say that this project, it is joy. Since we're in the spirit of holidays, it's a pumpkin spice latte. How about that? If you want to call it that. But I'm really, really hopeful that we can get this pinned down and get some federal dollars, because these are communities that are in need, especially around the safety issues. It's a super diverse community. And I'll personally say, I don't know if you've ever been down 82nd or you've interacted with someone who lost, a family member or a loved one or a friend who lost someone on that road. It's gut-wrenching. It really pulls at your strings, and to sit along a freight corridor, or however you want to see it, a river of cars, as some would like to describe it, while somebody's crying because they lost their friend. It's not a good feeling. And it's one that, as we continue to see improvements in our transportation system, hopefully this will be the shining example of how we not have that happen again. So my hat goes off to the staff. Continue your leadership, Councilors Wong and Lewis, because I'm hoping and I'm praying and have all the faith in the world that y'all can drive this through. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Gonzalez and then Lewis.
Sweet, thanks. Yeah, just echo, awesome work, love it. Love me some BRT, and some PSL and all that stuff, pumpkin spice latte, yeah. A quick question, how long is this project in terms of distance?
It's between 10 and 11 miles.
10, 11 miles, cool. Well, that's pretty long. And I did have one more question that for some reason, in terms of other ways that Metro, can we, like any other investments that Metro has made along the 82nd corridor over the last 10 years? And this, to me, the question kind of goes into pursuing that line of thinking about jobs, housing, transportation, vibrant economy. So like 2040 grants and parks and nature, affordable housing, et cetera. I think, to me, it helps build the case for this project even more so, just to continue activating it. But if you, from the top of your memory, could share, like how committed has Metro been to this area?
You want that one or you want me? Okay. Actually, there's been quite a bit that's been done in 82nd, so I love that question. Essentially, from all different angles, there's a lot of work that's going on in the TOD group at Metro and working to collaborate with community development corporations to develop more affordable housing and redevelopment. There's work on business stabilization, which they're working in coordination with the city of Portland and others to try to develop grants that are available. And I would also say just safety in general. With the Division Transit Project, when we came in, which is a long time ago, but there was a recognition of, there was a furniture store that was defunct. And I think, Metro purchased that site and then worked with Apano and others to turn it into a community asset with housing. And that's kind of an opportunity that we'd like to see continue throughout 82nd Avenue. The grant that just came from the state, our TOD group is looking to see where they can leverage that and make that work better. And so I'm sure I'm missing a whole bunch of things and others can jump in, but there's kind of a full court press from multiple angles coming in.
I love it. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, this is not just a transit and safety project, right? It's so much more about activating the community.
Absolutely.
And it's incredible and really, really hopeful that by fall of 2024, we get to affirm an LPA and help this project move into its next phase and its sister project in Washington County as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Lewis.
Sure. To Councilor Gonzalez's point, I represent the southern part of 82nd Avenue, in an area where people don't actually really think of 82nd as 82nd because it kind of goes three different ways at the bottom. But I do think it's really important to talk about what's there and who are we serving. A lot of folks who go to community college, not only at PCC, but also at CCC in the Harmony campus. And right behind the Harmony campus is the Three Creeks Natural Area, which has long been an area where Metro has helped champion the natural area there. We just awarded it one of our grants through the Parks Bond, at this point 3 months ago. So a huge amount of work to be done there to actually build out a trail system to connect to the neighborhoods west of 82nd. And that's the area that you might know as the vacant Bed Bath & Beyond / Bye Bye Baby. And I do think that there's some opportunity to look at what we can do in that part of the corridor to revitalize business, not only at the town center, but directly on the corridor. And this is pretty tricky because you actually have to connect to the Green Line off of the corridor through the town center, and there's already shuttle systems there, but we're just going to want to make sure that that connectivity is seamless. because when you get over to the east of the corridor is where you actually see our housing investments in Clackamas County come in, and you see the most dense areas of housing. I guess I just also, in our last steering committee meeting, we discussed the early data from the FX project on Division. And I do think that the data shows that people, though they are coming back to transit slowly, are coming back far more rapidly to the FX than to other traditional bus. In the case of 82nd Avenue, I don't think it's a question of if you build it, will they come? They've already come. This is already our most used route. It is the line that is at a stress point. It's almost a breaking point. And the rest of the system, if you've got 20 lines intersecting, will be improved just with this investment. I don't want to think too much about the 82nd Avenue as being just the Division Playbook 2.0, because I do think that there's some things to learn from that, in particular with the parallel of 82nd and 205 with the potentiality of tolling. I do think we have to think through what car capacity needs to remain, particularly as Councilor Rosenthal mentioned, it is a freight corridor, and the kind of uses we will continue to see car traffic. So we've got to think through how to get the better bus, the signal prioritization, and all of that, while also making sure that it is a safe place to drive. So I guess that's something that we're gonna have to work with PBOT on, because there's the road improvements that are outside of our jurisdiction that are not just about the transit planning, but they all have to come together.
Great. Before we make another round and I come back to Councilor Wong, I'd like to weigh in. I think some things come to mind for me listening to this conversation. One is going back to the budget note about how we were thinking about creating kind of a regional solution teams model and looking at how we do that. And it seems like 82nd, it seems like we've got staff that are really working all in the same basic geographic area. And how could we use that? How could we leverage that as a regional solutions team kind of kickoff pilot project? I know we've been thinking about how to do that around the region. And I think the important thing is that we not sit here and plan there, right? If we actually have teams that are working, it would be nice to have them co-located out. And how does that then, beget even more integration between the city of Portland and Clackamas County, and how do we continue down this path? Because I think it's really great. It just occurred to me that it's starting to sound like we've got something brewing. How do we formalize it and really make that a formal regional team? So just an observation. The second thing is, it just occurred to me, Councilor Wong and I just got back from Best Practices Milwaukee-Madison trip, and one of the things that makes Madison such a beautiful town is that they don't have continuous left turn lanes everywhere. Their corridors are actually have planted medians with trees and trees planted along the walking paths. And I don't want to lose sight of that as we go along. This community deserves a beautiful place to live and be, as well as being resilient, because that was their number one request when they said if you could have one thing in the last iteration of working with ODOT, they all said trees, and ODOT said that's the one thing we will not give you. So I would really encourage us to not leave that part to the last minute and to just a landscape, 10% to landscaping. I think it's a more important conversation than that about what do we want to get out of that placemaking, pride, and obviously the resiliency of that community, stormwater management, all of that. So I would just ask not to leave that as a side note, and really think through what we can achieve from that. Because I think that gets at our strategic target goals as well. All right, Councilor Wong.
Great. Thank you, Madam President. Just kind of building upon the regional solutions concept and our conversation last week about our North Star. I think when I drive down 82nd, which I do almost every day because I live on the corridor. I'm able to see kind of the impact kind of currently and in the future of the work that we do here at Metro. So of course, we have our equitable development strategy. I see TOD projects. I know our housing dollars have gone to, housing developments nearby. I also see where our SHS dollars are being deployed on 82nd. I know there's some green space that have been funded by Nature and Neighborhoods. We have a historic cemetery that we manage on 82nd. I know a lot of our neighbors have called the RID Patrol to come by and take care of illegal dumping. And I know there's been some placemaking grants that have gone out to 82nd as well. So I think what really that says to me is just, partnerships and what we're able to accomplish when this agency works together with our partners. And also just like how that advances, the North Star for our region. So I just wanted to highlight, all the different kind of departments here at Metro really working together to improve this corridor. So I want to express appreciation for that and really think more deeply about how we can replicate that elsewhere. Thank you.
Great. Anyone else? Any questions for us at the end after hearing? Any summary statements? What's next?
Well, we're excited about getting this project underway and appreciate the support.
Yes, Councilor Rosenthal.
Yeah, just a question, I guess it's a question for Peapod and the city of Portland now that they've taken over 82nd. Do they have an overall vision for, shall we say, redevelopment, reimagining the whole 82nd corridor? And we're talking a little bit about street trees and about community development things. Do they have, who's doing that?
Yeah, there are kind of two parts to them taking over the jurisdictional, having the jurisdictional transfer. Excuse me. The first part is really focused on critical fixes. They're working closely to make safety improvements that have been recognized for a really long time as being kind of emergency, and also bringing things up to standard, like paving. There's lots of paving issues. And so a big portion of the work right now is getting those things done. Some of it does include some medians, and so there's a lot of conversations with the businesses and others to try to make sure that they're doing it in such a way that it's likely to be supported, I guess, and also just kind of having those conversations. This is one of the things that makes safety better. But there's a second phase, the civic corridor kind of work, where they're thinking about what they could do with the remaining funds, and that'll take a little bit longer. And so we're coordinating closely with them too to try to understand what the city of Portland wants to do. They have some plans for things that they could do to like improve access into certain areas, or make some changes at a signal to make it easier for people to cross the streets, those kinds of things. And so some of those aren't necessarily funded now, and they'll happen a little bit later, but we're doing our best to coordinate really closely with that. At the same time, I think the city's overall land use plans are taking a fresh look at those too, and since they are actually really supportive, depending on how you were looking at it, there's a lot of ability to redevelop in key areas with a lot of the zoning now, so they're thinking about that too.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Wong and I were just driving down the corridor last night and almost witnessed somebody in the new safety crossing getting hit because it was late at night. And even with the pedestrian flashing lights, it was not enough for a motorist to signal in their head that there might be somebody there. So luckily everybody was okay, but it's better than it was, than to just leave somebody out there. But I think there's a lot more that we need to be working on, so, yeah. All right, with that, thank you, much appreciated. It's good work, and we look forward to the next steps.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, now onto a totally easy and ready to go conversation on the 2023 RTP. We have a presentation by both our Metro Director of Planning, Development, and Research, Catherine Charlo, and Kim Ellis, our RTP Project Manager, on the recommendations on key policy topics. Welcome.
Thank you, Council President Peterson and council members. Love that introduction. Totally easy and ready to go. We couldn't agree more. We really appreciate you having us here again to talk about this topic. I'm Catherine Charlo. As Council President Peterson said, I'm the Director of the Planning Development and Research Department, and I have Kim Ellis with me as well, who's the project manager for the RTP. We are definitely in the home stretch of adopting this regional transportation plan. We've been here a number of times. We will be here 2 more times between now and the end of the year. Once for a work session in early November, and then once at the end of November for final plan adoption. Today, what we're going to do is walk through the staff recommendations that we have discussed at our most recent meeting. Those reflect community engagement and input, and also your engagement and input. You should see in them some of the topics, the concerns, the priorities, and the comments you've given us in recent weeks and months. As we move toward that early November work session, and then the JPACT recommendation November 15th, and then your final adoption, we wanted to make sure that you know you're pretty familiar with what's in these recommendations. So Kim is going to walk through them again for you today. Please feel free to ask questions, clarify, because this is an important opportunity for you all as we move toward that concurrence, the agreement of the JPACT recommendation and whatever your adoption looks like, to make sure issues are on the table so that they can get dealt with by that time. And then I'll just say, I guess there's a lot in this plan. We have spent a lot of time in our recent meetings talking about some of the big projects, but just wanted to quickly highlight that there's a lot else in the plan as well. There's a new mobility policy, which Kim will talk about, which moves away from a historic way of measuring volume to capacity and toward a more nuanced way of measuring how people move and the safety and accessibility that relates to how they move. There's safety projects like 82nd, which we just heard about. There's multimodal projects. There's the commitment that you have asked for to electrification and ongoing work for funding. Since it is a menu and the way the meal looks depends on what we buy off the menu, that funding piece is super important. And then it obviously serves as the basis of ongoing collaboration with our partners. There's been a lot, there'll be a lot more. So thank you. I am going to turn it over to Kim to walk through the recommendations. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Next slide. I'll move forward. I won't stay long on this timeline, but we've been working at this for almost 2 years now, leading to final action by the Metro Council at the end of November. Next slide, please. I just wanted to take a moment just to highlight, that the recommendations that are included in your packet really are the culmination of the last 2 years of public and jurisdictional engagement, council discussions and direction throughout that process, and all of the discussions that we've had at the policy and technical advisory committees, in addition to the really deep community engagement that we've been doing throughout the process. Next slide. And those recommendations, as we went through the final public comment period, the final report is available online, and if you would like a copy, let me know and we can get that to you. But that public comment report documents all of the feedback that we received during the final public comment report or comment period, and then our Metro staff recommendations are reflective of the feedback that we received during that comment period, but again, throughout the process, these recommendations really build on what we've been hearing throughout the process to advance this plan to be the best that it can be, but also recognizing that we have more work to do as we go forward into next year. Next slide. And the recommendations, as we described at your last work session, are divided into two parts. Part one is what I'll be focused on today, and these are sort of what we've called the discussion items or key policy topics. Yeah, these are the most substantive comments that we've received, and we want to have time to be able to consider and discuss them individually. And so there are many recommendations around each of the 5 topics, some that will affect the RTP now, this 2023 RTP, and then other recommendations that are part of this part 1 will affect future work that we'll do between now and the next update. The second part of the recommendations are what we have called consent items, and there's over 600 individual comments and recommended actions. In some cases, no action is recommended, but there are many recommended actions included in that part 2, and those we will be bringing forward for consideration as a bundle. Today is an opportunity, if you have any questions about any of those particular recommendations that, or as a follow-up to today's meeting, I'd be happy to talk through that. Next slide. And one thing I didn't say, but hopefully is clear from the materials, that part 1 and part 2 are essentially Exhibit C to the ordinance. Just procedurally, they get adopted, and when adopted by the ordinance, it in effect amends the public review draft, and staff will update that public review draft as a final plan. So I'm going to walk through each of the 5 individually and highlight some of the high level recommendations, and happy to answer more questions about them. Next slide. So in terms of the investment emphasis, Council's been very clear throughout this process, and in particular, as we've had more recent discussions, that we want to continue to work to better align the project list with the RTP goals and projects or policies. And the project list recommendations around this, we do have in for this area a recommendation for ODOT to unbundle the bucket of safety and operations projects to reflect individually projects that have been adopted by the STIP, the State Transportation Improvement Program, so adopted by the Oregon Transportation Commission, but also within our Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program. And these are projects that are specifically aimed at improving safety, particularly for people biking, walking, and using transit. Other recommendations are also reflected in that include more regular reporting on safety investments that are being made using federal dollars in the region. This also will help us, help staff, as we are required to do federal reporting on safety and how we're doing relative to the performance targets that we have adopted in the Regional Transportation Plan. We're aiming for Vision Zero, 0 deaths and serious injuries by the year 2035. And this regular reporting can help us all understand how the region is investing in safety, specifically using those federal and state dollars. For the future and looking to the next regional transportation plan, there are also very explicit recommendations on improvements to how we develop the project list and that review and evaluation process that we're using, including having more JPAC oversight along with community and business leaders, continuing to improve our metrics and evaluation tools, particularly around safety and climate, and then also providing more policy guidance to project sponsors who are submitting projects to the Regional Transportation Plan. As a reminder, Metro did not develop the project list. Our partners developed the project list, and those projects came from locally adopted plans and studies through a public process. But we do, as they come into the RTP, want to ensure that they're advancing regional goals in addition to local priorities. Another aspect of the recommendations is to ensure that as we're mapping out the work plan and timeline for the next update to really build in more longer review and refinement period. That was something that, because of the federal deadline that we were working under for this RDP, we did not have as much time as we would have all liked, I think, to really be able to have that review and refinement in a more, in a longer space of time. Next slide. The second policy area is around implementation of the pricing policy that was developed as part of this update to the Regional Transportation Plan. And in particular, the recommendations really aim to ensure that the local and regional concerns are addressed through the NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act processes that are underway for the Regional Mobility Pricing Project, for the I-205 toll project. And that means also that those projects continue to follow through on the project commitments that have been adopted by JPACT and the Metro Council, and that as those projects come forward for future funding amendments in the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, that we are tracking and ensuring that those commitments are being followed through and that there's findings being submitted as part of those MTIP amendments by ODOT demonstrating how they're following through on that. We are working with the OMA staff on how best to reflect that in the Regional Transportation Plan, but that essentially is the recommendation, that we are building that in as a process step for those efforts. Catherine has been having meetings with you about the Metro Council values around tolling and pricing implementation. We feel our recommendations are supporting those, but that'll be something that she'll raise for you a discussion at the end of the work session today. Next slide. The third policy area is around future funding and the need to secure more funding for projects that are advancing the regional transportation goals. And so there are a number of recommendations outlined in here, including continuing to have JPAC be a forum to lead those conversations, participate in those conversations, and to really have a work program next year that is helping the region prepare for the upcoming 2025 legislative session, getting ready to participate in broader statewide transportation funding discussions that have already begun. Also working to ensure that the region is ready to take advantage of federal funding opportunities as they come up next year and beyond. And that includes also conducting additional research on potential new revenues that can help support the region in being prepared for those state level conversations. And then a final recommendation is really focused on the need to really double down on efforts to secure long-term sustainable funding for transit. We need it for our climate goals, our 2040 growth concept goals, and other goals in the RTP. Next slide.
I think we need council lamp blankets. So cold.
The fourth area is around our climate analysis and tools, and the recommendations for this topic area are focused on continuing to work to improve our tools and capabilities to inform future policy and investment decisions that are impacting climate. We are working to update the climate analysis. There have been concerns raised by Councilor Nolan, but many others through the process about the current fleet mix and some of the underlying assumptions that we were required to use based on the state requirements. We are going to update that, or we are in the process of updating that analysis to reflect the current fleet mix and the rate of transition that Oregon really has, which is not, people keep their cars longer in Oregon than nationally, and state assumptions assumed a much faster turnover. We're continuing to work to improve our evaluation and modeling tools. We've had a consultant supporting us as part of this RTP update, and we'll continue to use them as we're going forward. We also have a specific recommendation in there around requesting the state to conduct a review of their state assumptions that are really underlying the targets and our climate smart strategy. We know that they are making a lot of progress in certain areas, but the two in particular that I've already noted, they're not. And it's really important that the state achieve the things that they identified for themselves. And I think our analysis that we're redoing will demonstrate just the very importance of that. And then we also have recommended for Chapter 8 to have an action plan to really work on identifying specific actions that Metro can take, our partners can take to support the electrification transition and really leverage and complement the work that the state has been doing and has also been happening at the federal level. Next slide. And then the last topic area is around the mobility policy that Catherine highlighted at the beginning of the meeting. And the recommendations here really aim to map out what that future final work we need to do to support and inform system planning at the local level and local implementation as they go through local comprehensive plan amendments. There are a number of technical details that we need to continue to work on in coordination with our local partners, practitioners, but also the state agencies. There's a lot of work happening at the state level right now to implement the updated transportation planning rule, of which this policy is aligned with and really sets the stage for our region to be in a good place locally and regionally to meet that new transportation planning rule. It's also important to just recognize exactly what Catherine said, that this policy is important and the recommendations and moving forward to adopt it in this plan really allows the region to continue to shift our focus from focusing on vehicle congestion during the peak hour to thinking about and planning for mobility for all the ways that people travel all times of the day, and ensuring that we're building a complete multimodal transportation system for all. Next slide. Catherine also highlighted these sort of key things that are things I think to really be proud of in this RTP. But again, we recognize there is more work to be done, and we are ready to begin that work as we move forward. And I just want to thank Council for your leadership and collaboration and all of this work as we go forward. Next slide. And with that, we can begin discussion of the staff recommendations, and Catherine, and then after that, we have a slide for discussion of the tolling values piece as well.
Councilors, any comments? JPAC Chair, would you like to kick us off?
Yes, thank you, President Peterson. I've taken the privilege as JPAC Chair to make some comments. Thankfully, everyone on the council has participated in either some kind of workshop in the build-up to this, but also I know we've had some good conversations about our North Star and how this specific plan helps us make progress towards that North Star and that vision for our region. And within that, just like with anything that I think is of this scale and of this importance, we find ourselves often having fiery but necessary conversations, because I think that our region deserves it, and I think that is us taking the mantle for what's expected of us. That being said, I feel very deeply that this RTP is making some really good progress and headway. And I also know that there's a lot of good recommendations and feedback that we can still incorporate and implement between now and our adoption and JPAC's involvement and comments that will be coming up in the coming weeks. With regards to the staff recommendations, I'll say that I see the main themes reflected from what I've heard from my peers on the council and from electeds from not only JPAC, but also the R1 Act and other transportation bodies in that sense. I particularly want to acknowledge the importance of prioritization and the investment emphasis. And one of the things that I'm continuing to lean into with you, Catherine, Kim, and our team at Metro is how we as a council can continue to adjust to the best of our ability the projects and how they're prioritized, not only between now and our vote, but as this is implemented, so that the best projects get built. I also want to acknowledge that there are some very big projects in here that draw a lot of controversy and a lot of public testimony. I also want to acknowledge that those projects also have a lot of jurisdictional and community support as well, even if they're not coming to testify. And so there's merits to those projects. The council has found ways to create guidelines and parameters. And for me, our best area for influence is going to be making sure that those values are upheld. And I think we're going to be entering that conversation with this letter a little bit later. But I guess I didn't know I was going to talk this long when I first started. But in general, I think that the five recommendations, they look really relevant. They look good to me, and I feel like if we can get some general sense of thumbs up, it will give me, and I'm sure the JPAC counselors, Counselor Lewis and Counselor Simpson as well, a lot of confidence and ability to follow up with our peers on JPAC to have a level of ownership in those things, not only between now and the vote, but for implementation. And lastly, I know that we have some actions in here that direct us to 2028, and that's really important. And I hope people I don't want not the public, us, or staff, our council to feel like we're kind of pointing to the future, to a future decision. The future decision will be the good one just to prove this one. That is not what I feel. I want to emphasize again that I think that there's some really good things in this RTP. Most of it is really great, and it's just a matter of us elevating the good work that we've done. Yeah, I think I'll leave it for there, and I'm really excited for some dialogue and conversation with you, and hoping to take some notes and also follow up with you individually.
Counselors, anybody else? JPAC counselors. Counselor Lewis?
Sure, thank you. I want to thank staff. It's an immense amount of work to not only go through what we're going through in the project list discussion, but also the policies. And the two bridge and support each other, but they are their own bodies of work. So thank you for managing all of that. I took some time to review the comments that we received, and we received everything from line item edits. I'm gonna note there were some line item edits from ODOT trying to undo stuff we'd already done. We also got line item edits from individuals just trying to raise the priority of an intersection or a turn lane in their neighborhood. We had nonprofits that spent a lot of time doing work in transportation and transit planning who were advocating for us to go further on our policies. And then we also got comments from smaller nonprofits that almost never spend time doing transportation. One serving African youth saying, why is it that you can't put a bus shelter at every bus stop? We got comments from folks who want every single dollar to go into bike and ped. We got folks who said every next dollar needs to go into economic development related projects. We had people who said, if you're gonna continue to do work in multimodal, You're probably gonna invest in a streetcar, and this is the exact kind of streetcar I would like you to buy. Ow, we got everything. So to be able to distill that into 5 buckets for prioritization, that's commendable. And I think they're the right ones. I think they really do touch on where we can make the most impact across the region, because we cannot get in our policies into the weeds on every single person's neighborhood issue. You know, my city, Westland, just built 2 roundabouts. One was an ODOT project, one was a local project. They're less than a mile away from each other. They were built in parallel, and they are dramatically different, both in construction and how people are using them. So no one project is gonna look like any other project on our project list, and no policy even applied in the same place and in similar conditions results in the same set of construction principles. So I think we have to stay on course for these 5. We can have discussion about those 5, but I don't want us to vary from them, because we've got limited time left, and the things that we're gonna really be able to focus on are the things that people have asked loud and clear for us to focus on: safety, climate, tolling, affordability.
Thank you. Counselor Nolan and Counselor Rosenthal. Oh. Oh, I don't see his hand raised, sorry. Counselor Simpson, would you like to go before Counselor Nolan?
Just real quick, I just wanted to echo, I mean, and really state that when I joined this body, I think they were year 4 in the process of identifying projects and collecting all of this. So it was kind of like, just jump on the train and let's go. And in that time, I've learned a lot, but also to Councilor Lewis's point, I think this is a plan that it has a little bit of everything for everyone, but we can't get into the particulars for everybody. I will also say that this is a process that it took me by surprise, that like how we take in projects from other jurisdictions and then we decide and deliberate and all those things. And I think that, going back to Councilor Gonzalez's point, this next round, we're not signaling to the public that, you know, this is it. But I think in order for us to get to this transformational transportation space, we're taking those right steps in the next round to fully evaluate projects, make sure they line up with our values, make sure they have regional significance, and they do point to that North Star, because you know, we know that in this region, in terms of transportation, there's gaps in just about every jurisdiction. And there's a lot of good projects in there, and there are some big projects that are really holding hostage some good work within that project list. So I'll say, you know, looking forward to the next round, but I really want to tip my hat off to staff, to Kim, to all the work that they've done, and working with jurisdictions, that can't be easy, because that's too many voices, too many egos, too many, however you want to say it, at the table to try to manage, but also to get it into one document that we can all agree on. So I'll leave it there, and I'll pass it off to Councilor Nolan. Thank you, President Peterson.
Thank you, Counselor.
Madam President, thanks for the presentation. Thanks for all the meetings we've had to talk about this. Some improvements have been made, and I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to reviewing the results of your additional modeling work, and thank you for that opportunity. I have to say, I don't think this is a plan. I think it fits an obligation that we have to federal funding agencies to be able to continue to receive and submit applications for additional projects, but it's not really a plan. Because in my mind, a plan starts with an outcome or set of outcomes we're trying to accomplish. And throughout this process, which we've repeated largely intact from previous processes, we don't start with a set of outcomes and objectives and let alone measurable results, but we start with a list of wishes from our local partners. during this conversation in this room and in smaller conversations, I've been encouraged and happy that we've been talking about moving toward changes in our decision-making process so that the next 5-year document that comes out will be much closer to a plan, because Metro will use its convening and professional expertise to move us toward upfront focusing on what we want our transportation system to deliver. And I'm encouraged by that direction. I'm disappointed in its pace, but I tend to have a very strong sense of urgency. I believe in science, and I think the scientists are telling us that we really do not have 25 years to solve the effect of human behavior on climate on the planet. But that's a conversation, I guess, for another day. The other comment I'd make is that we, in this values statement and in the document itself, we talk about having 6, maybe 7 priorities. And I would submit that if we have 7 priorities, we really don't have any priorities, because I don't think you can prioritize everything related to a transportation system. And I can't think of something that someone might care about in transportation that's not on our priority list. And as you have heard me before, I believe that policies and positions and value statements that this council has already approved should lead us to prioritizing equity, climate, and safety. And the others are things we care about, but they don't help us make choices. If you've got a priority that covers everything, your priorities don't give you guidance to say, you know, that project contributes much less to our priorities than these other projects. And that's the essence of a plan. A plan isn't just putting everybody's wish list on a list and we go forward. A plan is, here's where we want to be in 5 years or 10 years. What are the steps that we can invest financial and human and political capital in that get us there most completely or most quickly? I'm looking forward to the improvements that we've made in this since it started, and I appreciate that effort by the staff as well as all the counselors here and remotely. I just think we need to move more boldly. And I'm looking forward to being part of that conversation as we continue to both amend this plan, this RTP, and start our efforts to do it in a truly 21st century fashion the next time.
Thank you. Councilor Rosenthal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I do want to comment that I appreciate all the work that staff has done. I mean, you really have a tiger by the tail here. All that outreach got perhaps more response than you expected or wanted, and it's hard to respond, as Councilor Lewis noted. They go from the very detailed line items to the conceptual stuff that is very hard to deal with in some regards. It's hard to put it into. So I appreciate the efforts and the changes, and I've been reviewing the Part 1C and coming up with some things. I don't see anything in there that I don't like. I see some things that I think are perhaps not quite enough, but I haven't quite finished my comments on that. Overall, I have a general sense that, yes, we've done a great project list. We have great values. We have, visionary values, and that's great. And we have a good project list, but that a project list is not, and I'm channeling one of my mayors, is not a vision for the future. And as you know, we've gone through a situation fairly in this last 5 years where we have changes in technology. We have artificial intelligence. We have the implications of the pandemic, which have changed work driving habits. We have a lot of technology issues, or a lot of technology changes that can change things, and we've changed the pattern of development that's gone on in this area. The 2040 growth plan is not exactly as we anticipated it, so we have a lot of changes that we may have to address in terms of economic development and in terms of providing the visions or the values that we think we want to provide. So I realize there's a lot of work that still has to be done. We're making progress, and we're caught between a rock and a hard place. We do need to approve it so projects can be funded, because we have a lot of good projects. But we also have to keep in mind that the vision is still something we're working on. This isn't a one and done, and then we can go away for 3 years and wait for 2 more years. So the process, and I get this from in my district, the process of amending things to address some local needs and local issues that aren't just part of a project list it remains, and it'll probably have to be dealt with fairly quickly over the immediate period, not just 3 years from now. So I think a couple things are needed. I think we have to solve some of the specific issues, some specific plans. I think we have some very serious issues. I mean, the congestion in the Modus on I-5 going north is an economic drag on the region, and I think that's something that we have to work hard to solve. So I think there's things that we have to be more specific about planning, and then I think. In a larger sense, and I've said this to many people, and I haven't gotten a disagreement even from some representatives, that we need to have more authority in a general sense to deal with regional planning issues. We have seen from the past that we can have a lot of values and we can present them to the state, but the state doesn't always pay attention to them in the way that we feel we need to. We have a very different set of issues, and we're probably the only agency that has the capacity, both technical as well as from a regional perspective, to deal with some of these things. So I think that that's something that we need to be working on and trying to get. We have a seat at the table, but we aren't always listened to, and I think that's something that we need to work to improve. So anyway. You'll see more comments from me, and you know that you have seen a lot already. Thank you. But thank you for all your hard work. It's a daunting task. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Counselor. I'll just wrap this up. I am excited about being able to have this next conversation around project prioritization. There are states and regions who have already gone before us, so we're not reinventing the wheel on that. We just need to figure out how to apply our Oregon values, our regional values, to that sort of conversation in terms of performance metrics that we would use or create ourselves. But I think we definitely have other regions and states to look at that have created this opportunity for a conversation, because I think one of the things we have to keep in mind is that while a transportation project that is proposed, we may or may not agree with, there is always the impetus of the actual issue on the ground that started the conversation. And I want to make sure that when we go through this process, we are not going in with just the view that the project has to, that the project can change. The problem statement can be rescoped to be more broader and more thoughtful, and not as narrowly tailored as some of these transportation projects get. That we are actually working to better all parts of this region from the different perspectives. But these projects have to do more than just narrowly tailored scopes that reduce congestion for vehicle movement, right? So I think what it'll do is it'll spark a conversation. So that has to start sooner rather than later, so that there is the opportunity for rescoping, rethinking, not just rebranding, not greenwashing, but actually working on the project. And I know you guys do that on a daily basis as you go through this process to really work on how to make the projects better, but let's do it in a more public way with everybody from the very beginning and really create this, because the hardest part is the first time you do it. And then it gets easier afterwards because everybody understands the criteria, everybody understands where you're headed for, and some projects get kicked out, but it's actually quite a small amount. And get put on the back burner until you can figure out what it is you're trying to solve for. But I think we should look to Smart Growth America, who has a good log of the states and regions that have done that, as well as, I just like saying it, the Cows Institute at Madison. It's actually the Transportation Institute, and I can't remember what their acronym is for, but it's called COWS. They've been cataloging these things for quite some time and working with the states and regions on not just how to measure accessibility, not just on these performance metrics themselves, but how do the states and the regions actually use those performance metrics. So I look forward to that. And then just on a fun note, just because I haven't asked recently, does our model accommodate roundabouts yet?
I don't think so.
Sorry to go there, but to me, the reason my head went there is because if we are essentially going to be looking at rethinking, rescoping projects, intersections are usually the basic cause of all congestion within the region. And, I was going to get my PhD to help make it so.
President Peterson, I will confirm that, but I think the answer is no.
I doubted it. But there are tools that we have learned along the way, whether it's a BRT and how we're modeling it, or whether it's a roundabout and how we're modeling it. We need to see those tools on the ground actually become part of the modeling process as we go forward, so that we're not making gross assumptions that don't actually show the amount of benefit we get from these things. So I would just ask that we also look at the tools and make sure that our tools are ready to be utilized in the way that helps us with this project prioritization, project rescoping, rethinking. So sorry to go there, but that's where my head went. With that, Councilor Nolan.
Quick follow-up on that. I believe the model also doesn't, and by ODOT direction, cannot incorporate induced demand into our projections. And science tells us that induced demand happens regularly. And I agree, roundabouts that are properly designed can help improve traffic flow and therefore.
Anything properly designed works well.
We'll leave that for another day. But if we're gonna talk about tools that we should be using, that one should be on the short list.
President Peterson, could I make a quick comment? So there is work happening at the state level, Councilor Nolan, to further develop tools to help us better evaluate induced travel. So there is work, and so my hope is that we'll be able to bring that as part of our tool set. But there's a Oregon statewide modeling collaborative that has modelers from all over the state, including ODOT. Our research center staff are in leadership roles in that, and so they know. I ask that question. We need to be able to account for induced travel. Our tools don't. They do somewhat, but not fully, as you correctly noted. So there is work happening on that.
Go get them.
Great. I think we have one last thing to talk through as part of this conversation.
Yes.
Or did you want it to be separate?
Yes, I will briefly introduce it, and then I think I will turn it over to you and Councilor Lewis. We passed out, and you all have seen before and commented on, a draft statement of Metro Council values on proposed toll projects and regional congestion pricing. A number of our partner jurisdictions are making this type of statement as the conversation around tolling and pricing heats up in the region. And honestly, as we move toward understanding better what is on the table and what is not on the table in terms of proposals. So your JPACT counselors asked us to work with them to put a draft together, and that's what's in front of you. And happy to walk through it if that's useful, or simply to turn it over to Councilor Lewis and President Peterson to have a discussion about it. Just let me know what is helpful.
Sure, thank you so much. This draft is the work of our team, both in looking at what we need to see out of tolling to make it workable for the region, but also in reflection of a similar statement that was signed off onto in August and September by jurisdictions across Clackamas County. And I think it might have included invitation for sign-on in Washington and Multnomah counties as well. But it was really driven through the C4 process. The opportunity for local governments right now to go to the legislature, to the OTC, to the governor's office, and basically list off the things that aren't working, not only about process, but the proposed products in tolling that are coming out of the 205 tolling program. I think it is important, after listening to the subcommittee on transportation planning, that the legislature has stood up. They've had one meeting, met for the first time during legislative days 2 weeks ago. I think it's really important that Metro not be silent here, because the legislature is in this position of hearing a lot of resistance and saying, this is a decision we thought we already made, and now we have a whole bunch of people who are angry about it. It must be because elections change at the local level. These are a whole bunch of new players. And that's not true. And what we need to do is, as the region, despite the fact none of us were elected at the time, our agency hasn't wavered in its commitment to make tolling something that will work and not do harm to local communities. And this letter really is the balance between, yes, we're still committed to marching down this path with you, but you've left us in the dust and you're stomping all over us. And one of the priorities that is most clear, I believe, is that it's not just about saying that the Equity Committee has met and there will be a low-income toll program of some flavor. It's about what jurisdictions actually need if they're affected. So I will leave it at that. I feel like I've been raising the need to communicate and be assertive in a defensive posture, standing with our communities that are getting left behind. There will be opportunity for us to go to the legislature because they're going to do some sort of roadshow with this subcommittee. They'll be here. But I think it's also important for us to have a tool for OTC because they are looked at as the tolling authority. And they are looked at as intermediate decision makers by ODOT.
Yeah, I would just add a big round of thanks to Councilor Lewis, who's on the ground in the community who's most affected immediately by what's going on, and all the work that you have been doing to try and figure out a path through, and also while I've sat on RTAC, trying to weave a path through that's both the long-term vision that we have for our region, but the short-term implementation of the specifics, and feeling like I and the entire RTAC table have been speaking into the wind. So it's making it very difficult to be for anything at this point, I would say, except we have consensus for the I-5 bridge, and that's a great step forward. But that doesn't mean that it directly applies to another part of our region when that part of the region does not have a fully formed transportation system to begin with. There is no other option. You can try and take a bus, but you will not get to where you are needing to go. And you can try and take another bridge, but you have to go up to Selwood Bridge, or you have to go down to the Canby Ferry. Neither one is really an option. So when we talk about this, we need to really think about what does it mean for the entirety of the system, not just for demand management on the bridge or to pay for a project. And I think we need to make a very strong statement, as Councilor Lewis said, that you don't do these things, again, in a very narrowly scoped way. That is the wrong way to approach an urban area. If you think an urban area has one issue and one issue only, and you can only solve for it at one issue at a time, then I think you have spent too much time in Salem. So with that, I will agree that we need to move quickly to be able to sign on to this, and encourage you all to do a thumbs up if you feel moved to do so, so that we can get our values on the table as quickly as possible and make it very clear that if we have to take a position, pro or against in the future, that we have made our statement known about why we need to take that kind of stance, so. Questions? Counselor Wong.
Great, thank you, Madam President, and thanks for everyone that put this value statement together. I think it has a lot of great points. A couple of things I did see are and Councilor Lewis raised the low-income fare program, but I don't see it like really strongly called out. I see something about design with regional implementation and collaboration in mind to avoid disproportionate economic disadvantages. And I think it would be more forceful if we called out that more directly. So it's not just about designing, but like having it. And I know I don't think we can use tolling dollars, but I think one of the core issues that we're trying to address with that is that low-income folks increasingly have to travel further to get to their jobs or wherever they need to go. And that's, directly correlated to housing prices kind of in, central city or, where a lot of places have jobs. And I think that's one of the things that we're trying to solve for is, as this displacement happens, not only do low-income folks have to travel more, they may now have to pay to do that. And we can address that through, the low-income fare program, which I think just needs to be highlighted more, and also just, from our North Star, just really addressing that housing affordability issue, which may or may not fit in here, but I just want us to be thinking about that from that lens as well.
Counselor, I think you brought up the point that we're trying to flip it over, the last bullet points, where we are specifically urging ODOT to bring the work of the EMAC forward. And maybe what I'm hearing is a proposal to add a second sentence there to do this particularly with folks who have been displaced to the edges of the region and need to travel further in mind.
Oh, I did miss the back. Thank you very much.
I always ask for a one-pager because who turns things over?
Right, okay, thank you.
But maybe a little wordsmithing on that bullet point would represent what you've brought forward.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Can I unpack that a little bit? Because I think there is a displacement to the edge of the region and beyond. So yes. But there are communities at the edge of our region who do not have a full transportation network and have not had one, and nobody has really paid any attention to that for a very long time, right? And I think I would want to be more clear about both of those things being true at the same time. We have whole communities that have not been invested in for decades now because they are not the core of our region. And displacement from the core is one. Being at the edge and living at the edge for all that time, for whatever reason, whether it's affordable housing, whether it's because it's the community that you grew up in, you want to stay in, or you're aging in place. But we definitely have a huge issue around the edge of our region. And this particular project is showing just how disinvested this part of the region has been. So I just didn't want to leave it hanging there because it's so complex. So, Councilor Nolan, did you have something else to add?
I do.
Yep, go ahead.
I think we err substantially in thinking that it is only the fringe of this region that does not have an adequate transportation system.
I didn't say only.
And if this values statement focuses on the fringe to the detriment of the core of the region, then I can't support it. But I think it also would lead to implementation that contradicts our policies. We don't have an adequate transportation system anywhere in this region. And on a per capita basis, I would actually argue that we probably have a more complete transportation system on the fringes of the region than in the more dense parts, densely populated parts of the region. And I wanted to ask if this value statement will be used to officially support on Metro's behalf any particular decisions. I'd like to know what those are. Does this value statement say that we oppose tolls on the I-205 projects? Or would it be used to defend that position?
There are a series of venues that we are part of.
Yep.
Including the RTAC for the entirety of the conversation around tolling, as well as the project itself. And so I would say it's the value statement at which we would be using that to convey to ODOT and to the OTC and to the legislature whether they're headed in the right direction or not. And at some point, the whole council will have to weigh in on a decision, but before we can take a stand, we need to say what we need to see.
Madam President, respectfully, I don't think this says that. It says things like commit a portion of tolling and pricing revenues to support projects on the local systems. Is $100,000 a portion, or do we mean it has to provide 20% or 80%? Unless we get to specifics, this document allows advocacy for almost any position.
Considering that there's no negotiation for any of that money to go to the local transportation system right now, this allows us the flexibility to say we want to see that and we want to negotiate. It continues that conversation.
It leaves it so that if I support this, I don't really know what I'm supporting. I don't know what I am directing someone who is speaking on my behalf to push for.
Well, obviously, it's an iterative process, and we would be back with any kind of specifics that are coming out of the conversations. Councilor Rosenthal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to note on page 2, the top bullet, there is either a word missing or a word misplaced. There's a verb sandwiched in between on the last sentence that you can't, something provide transparency. There's either and or something missing there. That's a technical issue. This is quite an improvement over what I saw, and I have to channel one of the mayors in Councilor Lewis's district, that it's nice to see regional equity at least included as a concept, not exactly very explicitly, but it is there in one of the bullets. It's always hard to refer to the bullets because there's no numbered organization, so you can't say this would be the fourth bullet down in the third section of bullets, but I guess that's the best way to refer to it. And that's regional equity. In other words, each region should see approximately the same sort of economic impact, and I think that's an important concept. And I'm glad to see that there. But that said, words matter. I think we all realize that. And in this case, a lot of these words are carefully chosen. I have not had a chance to read them all and look at them all in detail, so I can't say. But it's a good statement of values. I would just add, vis-a-vis the conversation that was just between the chair and Councilor Nolan, is I have recommended, and fairly vociferous about it, I guess I would say, is that I think it's one thing to state our values, but I think as part of our values, I think Metro should come up with a model tolling plan, including allocation. I think it's within our capacity, and I think even if it's just a counterpoint to provide for And I think this is essentially what Representative Pham more or less insinuated at her comments at our last council session. I think that we would be remiss if we don't do this, because it's the only thing that we can do that really incorporates all of our values if we believe in these values. And I don't think this, the values as stated are meant to diminish the needs for transportation, a better transportation system, a complete transportation system in the core area. I think Councilor Craddock was very constant in pointing out we do not have a complete system, and we still need to work on that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Gonzalez.
Thanks, President Peterson and Councilor Lewis for your hard work on this. Just to add my my own 2 cents, I see a decent blend of high-level themes, kind of in the bold statements that you've shared with us, and from the first draft to where we are now, certainly for the comment that has been, for the comments that have been offered, I see it reflected. I appreciate the comments around more firm language around low-income toll program, especially for equity impacted areas. I think the second page, the 3 bullet points are really clear in terms of what specifically we're urging ODOT to do. And I mean, I also just, I am comfortable leaning into the fact that this is a very iterative process, a highly charged political process that is a little volatile, but I think we need to weigh in. And I want us to be in the ring, and to be able to generally frame our values from what I've seen these kind of statements and documents do in other major projects in the, oh, this got really loud. In other major projects in the region, I've seen tangible impact in them. And so I feel comfortable with what's framed, and look forward to supporting however we can for some of these things to be executed, and just to kind of address some of the, some of the sentiment around what we're agreeing to and what we're not agreeing to. I think there are some intrinsic intangibles that we are not, that come across as suggesting, but are essentially deal breakers for us. And I think that we have hopefully a shared understanding of those and how Metro shows up. And so I think that this letter does this document does the best job possible to capture a paradigm shift in how we pay for transportation and major projects in our region, and while also trying to be succinct and not have it be, 30 pages long. So, thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Nolan, and then we'll wrap this up.
Thanks, Madam President. I'm curious, Councilor Gonzalez, what are the deal breakers that we all agree on?
Revenue share. Can we agree on that? I mean, we're not in a council meeting, so I don't want us to. We're in a work session, but I think that long-term oversight and accountability that is reflective of community's values, revenue share, making sure that there's direct funding for transit and direct funding for local roads, not only not a toll program that only pays for the highway infrastructure and the toll infrastructure. A system that helps us to, a toll system that helps us through the nature of the investments that we make, that delivers immediately accessible alternatives that are safe, affordable, and reliable, and that give people a decent alternative to transportation, to driving on the highway. And ultimately, I think that the biggest one I see, which is the first bold statement, is trust. And I think that's something that is really tested right now at those regional tolling tables. So I would say those are the things that immediately pop up to me. Like in a lot of our projects, we've tried to be a good faith partner with ODOT and to stay at the table with them and to help be a guiding partner in doing the projects well and doing the projects right to deliver. Because I think at the end of the day, we want certain things done, but we don't own and we don't operate. So how do we show up with our best practice, our data, our expertise, and the community voice channels that we have to elevate those narratives, those perspectives, those lived experiences? And you know, this is a page and a quarter. I think for the most part, I see what I said reflected in here.
That's incredibly helpful. But I don't think most of the readers who aren't in this room will take that out of this document. And that's what I'm searching for. Something that doesn't need for the reader to have been in our conversations in order to understand the message we're delivering. And I appreciate your interpretation of it, and it helps me. But I'm just saying I don't think this document does it.
I think what we were trying to do is take the letter that has already gone out with the other signatures on it and be able to mirror it with the addition of the Metro Council values on it, which were just a couple things that we wanted to make sure we got additional on there. So I think what you're seeing is a compilation of a lot of interests that we're trying to mirror and support the other letter, while also, I'm going to look at Catherine to explain where where this came from, which is maybe why it seems large and full of other expectations, but I think we're trying to mirror that.
I think we're also fitting into the sets of conversations that have been set by ODOT themselves in how they've rolled out this process. So to some extent, we're speaking to the 205 project because there's more there. We've actually seen, here are some potential gantry points. Here are some specifics that we might do. Whereas with the regional mobility pricing project, we've seen two concepts of zones. And do you want zone 2A or zone 2B? And that doesn't really lend itself to a letter when we're trying to address both at the same time. I'm going to take a stab at what I think we could all agree on. 1, trust and respect to local jurisdictions. 2, revenue share. 3, diversion is real and has to be addressed. 4, transit has to be funded. 5, equity is not an afterthought. It's a real program, and it actually considers both the regional equity Councilor Rosenthal spoke to, but also people who have been disenfranchised by the system for far too long because of their race or their income. And then climate is paid for. It is not just a place to find project funding. I might have left something out, but that's
Madam
the
President,
core.
I wish we had started there. Thank you for, maybe the conversation was necessary to get us there. But that synthesis, thank you, Councilor Lewis, seems a more direct communication of what we actually stand for.
Seems like all of the bullet points still exist, just changing the headings and reorganizing to get to those, if I'm hearing correctly.
You all could certainly direct staff to create a statement that reflects those key bullets.
I just want to
if
make sure that
would
we're
be
also
helpful.
reflecting our partners who are just as, if not more frustrated than we are as well. In terms of they need to see that we are reiterating and we are
If we want to talk about diversion, we better be looking at the I-5 bridge, because tolling on that's going to create a lot of diversion.
Only one alternative.
So just that, I'm comfortable with staff working on it's language that helps to capture what we've shared. And you know, I think if we all went around like, oh, this is what I think we all agree on, it's a little bit different, and but mostly the same in terms of how we voice it and how we see it from our different vantage points in the region. and the conversations that, we have with our constituents and with other decision makers. So I'm okay with that. I think that from what I've heard from everyone shared today, frankly, I think all of those sentiments are captured in one of the bullet points, to be honest. I think it's probably a matter of framing and prioritization. But I think that those sentiments are reflected. That's just my opinion. And I think that these bullet points are also, I think that these also kind of emulate what other, it's like there's a salient nature to the bullet points that are responding to some of the like active things. So they're like, how do you put this thing, if this is a really big topic of conversation out in the world, and we have to fit it here, but I think I see it. I see it. So I'm okay with that recommendation, President Peterson and Councilor Lewis, if it's welcome for staff to work on that.
It could just be another paragraph in the intro that says that these are the basic themes that need to be dealt with, right? Those, and then just leave the rest of the letter the same. If that's the case, do we have thumbs up that we can move forward with a letter that would probably be submitted under both Councilor Lewis and I as president and deputy president? I mean, if you want to do it by signature but I would rather have it come from the entire council, even if the majority, I mean, if the majority is good with you, even though a bullet point or a thought blurb wasn't included, that we could include it, just have it come from the entire council. I think that's much more powerful. And if individuals have other things they want to add, then I would say that that's probably up to the individual to add to their own comments on the process as an elected official. Because this needs to get in.
If you want to sign it on behalf of the council, I, for one, would want to see it before it goes out and is signed.
Yeah, if we could.
Because we've already shown that we interpret words differently.
Yeah. But I think that there's a majority to move forward with what we've talked about. And so I don't know what the timeline is to get this in, but we know we want to affect both the legislative and the OTC and the RTAC all at the same time in terms of being able to state our position before we're in front of those folks.
We could create a draft by the end of the week, I think.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Good to go?
There's one more.
Oh, is there? Councilor Rosenthal.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just want to say I agree with it's probably important to put a summary of the points that Councilor Lewis made to make it clear that distilling these other bullet points comes up with something that is a little more substantive and a little clearer. So I support that and look forward to seeing what you come up with.
Great, thank you. All right. Thank you for that good conversation. It's a tough issue, and all of the issues under this conversation are tough, but it really will help move us along with one voice, and one voice as a region too, because this really has become a conversation that the region needs to have with the state. So I think that that's very helpful. With that, I'll close this out, seeing no other hands raised, and move on to COO Communications. Elisa.
First, I wanted to officially thank King City for hosting us last night for one of our mixers, and to Councilors Lewis, Gonzalez, and Rosenthal for joining me there. It was a wonderful opportunity. Am I working? Sorry.
Hit it. Who pressed that one?
Should I project? Will that
Yes.
work?
There we go.
Okay. It was a wonderful opportunity to just be in community and check in with folks that we don't get to see too often. They are very grateful, King City is very grateful to Metro for the support that we've given them through their planning processes. And I think one of my takeaways in talking to some of the counselors who are volunteer counselors is just, the incredible act of service that it is in many of our cities for these elected officials to, dedicate their time in their evenings and, there's fun stuff like ribbon cutting, but there's also, a lot of community strife and, often, a lot of complaints that are directed toward these individuals who are really just showing up because they care. And, it felt really good to be out there with them, listening and hearing what's important to them, so that we can do everything we can here to support them. So it was really lovely, and we had quite a lot of people. So thanks to GAPD, shout out to you all for organizing. It's been really lovely, and I can't wait to do the next one. I think it's even, I thought our Oregon City one was great, and this one was like even better. It just felt like we were building on that. Thanks also to all the department directors and their staff who came and chatted with folks. So that was one. And then I just also wanted to report out on an event that we hosted Saturday, the second annual Willamette Cove Environmental Field Day, that we used to raise awareness about Willamette Cove, organizations and science that are going to be used to clean it up and make it safe for people and plants and animals. We got great weather. We're able to connect with community members, advocacy groups, and the other organizations working on the Portland Harbor at the Crawford Street Park on top of the bluff overlooking Willamette Cove. The day started with an open blessing from the tribes, including the Confederated Tribes and Bands of the Yakima Nation, Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, and Confederated Tribes of the Warm Springs. And there were education and hands-on activity stations set up around the park, including Superfund 101, education on Portland Harbor Superfund, interactive activities engaging or demonstrating dredging and capping, and hands-on activities on restoration, such as creating seed bombs and future nature park programming with Legos. The Audubon Society was also there, and they had spotting scopes to view different birds and wildlife, and our partner tribes brought information and artifacts on cultural resources, wildlife, and plants. The event drew in about 100 community members, 9 agencies, 3 tribes, 7 advocacy groups, and 2 consultants in the project team. So there's some great photos apparently of the event that'll be landing in your inbox soon, but I just wanted to make sure that we shared this kind of amazing coming together of people and in a sacred place that hopefully we can steward into a much healthier place in the future. So thank you.
Great. Good forward momentum. Thank you. Counselor communication. Counselor Gonzalez, double-handed.
Cool, yeah. In person, virtual, we're here for it. First thing, the Metro Parks Department has been working on a really cool community choice program. And there's like I think 36 community projects that are up for vote right now, where you and the region can help allocate up to $2 million to community projects, which is pretty incredible in terms of government budgeting and opening up the process for community involvement, self-determination, all that kind of stuff is really cool. So if you have a chance to go look at the projects and cast a vote, obviously, hope that a lot of people throughout the region get to engage in that. And ultimately, the project is successful so we can continue to scale it. Pretty cool. Also, on Friday, I was invited to speak at an event hosted by Latino Built, which is a contractor association here in Oregon. And they launched a apprenticeship program, which they say, and I'm always just careful to be like the first ever, because it's hard to know for sure if it is the first ever, but bilingual, bicultural construction apprenticeship program in Oregon. And it was just really exciting. They have a full cohort of mostly Latinas that are entering the trades. And the program will be a few weeks from what I understand. And the program was created as a result of the Construction Careers Pathway Program and the energy and policy that they see organized by government. And so it's just really great to see the policy creating these waves and these ripples that eventually become programs. So I thought that was really cool, and I was really happy to be there on behalf of Metro, and I'm hoping that I know we have a lot of great apprenticeship programs throughout the region that they can continue to scale, grow, and serve, people, give them the opportunity to get some of those great jobs.
Awesome. Any other counselors for counselor communication? Counselor Lewis?
Yeah, I was able to attend the Willamette Cove Field Day and just want to add extra emphasis not only to our community partners, but particularly the tribal leaders who attended and sat in the hot sun all day. The opportunity to be in that space and envisioning the future is incredibly powerful. I was able to bring Carrick into just really, I kind of judge some of these projects based off like, when we complete this, what year of school will he be in? And I was a little bit like, well, we probably will be done with school on this one. But that's okay. Maybe, maybe he'll have special times as an adult. So the opportunity to continue to invest not only on that site, but in this process, I think is really important. And then I also just wanted to be really clear for the record, while Marisa may have stated that the event in King City was better than the event in Oregon City, King City is not better than Oregon City.
Correct, thank you. Yes, events, yes, we love all our cities.
Although the mayor of Oregon City showed up, so that was very nice.
Yes, it was great to see her as well.
All right, any other communications? All right, well, for the good of the order, we are adjourned, but I did want to say, which I did not, and I apologize, thank you to Catherine and to Kim for all the hard work on the RTP and for getting us on the same page about these values, so thank you. All right, with that, we're adjourned.